Welcome, everyone. So at GSL, we believe that collecting and using data to drive decision making is a powerful tool for school leaders to drive change and improvement in their schools. And so we're excited to have with us today Dr. Ashley to talk about how school leaders can use data to make decisions for school improvement and student achievement. Dr. Ashley is an associate professor of education at the University of Nottingham, Ningbo, China. Passionate about school leadership, school improvement, and student learning and achievement, her experience ranges from a practitioner's perspective to teaching and training school leaders and principals. With over 3 decades of experience in teaching and leading schools, including a teaching position at the University of Nottingham, Malaysia, she has led and turned around 2 schools to come out on top in public examinations in the country. Dr. Ashley is now actively involved in research, focusing on various aspects of teacher and principal education, leadership, and development. Dr. Ashley, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Right. Thank you, Aniket. Thank you for inviting me to this interview. I'm very happy to share what I know from the practitioner's point of view and now from an academic's point of view. Right.
Thank you. We're so excited to hear from you on this topic. So, on this point of collecting and using data, to begin with, what data do you feel school leaders need to have access to consistently?
Well, we are in the era of accountability. So when we talk about accountability, it means that principals are made responsible for academic achievement because school performance is very much related to accountability. So that means principals need to lead learning. So therefore, academic achievement is the most important thing in schools. So when we talk about gathering data, therefore, data that is concerned with student learning and academic achievement becomes very important. So we need to track students' academic progress, set targets, and think of what are the intervention plans that are suitable for different students, because different students would need different ways of help. These are like setting goals and targets for each student. And these goals have to be measurable, must be achievable. So therefore, it is very important to have not only a general set of data for the school, but also data for each individual student. So that is very important. So data is important because we need to make decision, the correct decision. So data only provide us the foundation to make those decisions, the correct decision. So even the intervention plans that we organize to help students, what the teachers need to do, they cannot just think of something which they think they can do to help, but what they need to do have to be suitable for the students. That means data will tell them what kind of prescriptions are needed. So that's why, and then data is also not only important in identifying the problem of individual students, but also help to allocate resources. So resources, is very limited in schools. So therefore, based on data, we will be able to allocate resources in the most cost-effective manner, especially when we talk about now, we don't have enough teachers and also time.
Thank you. And I think you started talking about it a little bit towards the end, but would love to hear more about how you have seen this data being used for improving either the school or student achievement.
Right. You are talking about my personal experience. So I would say that I use data a lot in making decisions, not only for management, but also for teachers to do their teaching, right? So you find that with data, I was able to help teachers to supervise learning, to identify the weaknesses and build on the strength of the students. Of course, when we talk about data, we need to identify the takeoff value. That means where each student start from. And we set target, what we call expected target rate for each student. So in between this, the TOV, which is the target, what do you call the takeoff value, and the expected target rate, we spend over 1 year. So you'll find that we will be able to trace where they lag behind, and we are able to provide the intervention plans in a timely manner. So it is like formative rather than summative. So along the during the year, you will find that after assessment, so you find that the students haven't done well. So you'll be able to trace when is the best time to provide them with help. And together with this kind of target set, it is very important that the teachers also must be able to have a track record of the questions that they set in the exam. Like, for example, question 1 was on a topic that was taught 2 years ago, because usually in the public exam it's over 3 years learning period. So, and then which chapter of the syllabus. So if you're able to trace this, let's say if the test has 50 questions, and you're able to trace where each of these questions were set, and you'll be able to come up with which chapters they were weak in, and then you'll be able to identify the students who are weak in those chapters to go for what you call remedial class. And you allocate a teacher just to teach one chapter, to reteach that chapter, rather than, the whole school will do the reteaching all over again. So this kind of solve resource problems with resources, time, and then teachers will be overworked because they are only told to only teach one chapter, maybe in the period of only 1 week, and only those students who are identified weak in that chapter will have to attend. So I did this when I was in school, and you find that it was very effective, because you don't overwork the students and the teachers. So there is meaning,
Yeah, no, I think that's a really important distinction you make between the formative and assessment and continuously getting that data in.
Yes.
So, a lot of the work we do, Dr. Ashley, is with under-resourced schools. So when you think about contexts like ours, what are some interesting data collection systems that you might have come across?
Well, whatever we do as leaders and also in teaching, it is very important that we factor in the context of the school. Like I have taught in a few schools, and then in my work as training for teachers when I was principal, right? I visited many schools, and you find that the policy given by the government is like one policy that fits all, but in practice it doesn't work. So it is up to the principal. I understand why the government come up with an umbrella policy, right? But when it comes down to the school level, it is very important for the principal to be able to interpret those policies that suit the context of their school, of course within the parameters of the policy. Like, for example, in Malaysia, we had many kinds of schools. We had government-aided school, we have what you call government national schools, we have vernacular schools, we have schools that are very well equipped, and we have schools who are very, very poorly equipped. So therefore, the principal need to be able to interpret the policies given by the government according to the need of the school. Like, for example, a school that is situated in a rural area that has a problem with funds. So you find that, and these kind of schools are really in rural schools and places where the community is of lower social-economic status. So you find that there is not much money to help make organize programs, and you find that this kind of schools, you find absenteeism among students are very high. So if the government say that, oh, all principals need to practice instructional leadership, so they come up with a lot of activities which they interpreted in their way, and it might not be suitable for this kind of school, because when I go and do research and I interview the principal will say, I'm not interested in instructional leadership. I'm more interested in getting the students to come to school. See, so they have a different set of problem. So for them, it is important to get the boys and girls, the kids in the community, to come to school, to give them meaning of schooling and education, and not about academic achievement in that case. So to have academic achievement, to achieve that, you need to have attendance, good attendance first, right? So this is also very important, because when the students are not interested in learning, when the environment does not have a learning aim or a vision, you find that the teachers lose their morale. So it becomes like the problem becomes expanded to teachers not motivated to teach, not motivated to go further. So whatever instructional theories or transformational theories that we talk about in leadership theories might not be suitable in this kind of context. So you find that in research, there is also findings that say that instructional leadership are very suitable for high-performing schools, not for schools that have poor resources like this. So they would need a different kind of leadership. So it boils down to the point that the principals themselves must be smart enough to identify the needs of the school, not just to follow what the government say. In schools, in places where the education system is top-down, hierarchical, so you find that the principals very often don't know what they are actually doing, because they just implement what the authorities told them to do, rather than doing what they need to do. See, so that is a problem that probably principals and school leaders need to look into. No, we do not. We mustn't follow blindly, what the authorities say. But then, having said that, you must also understand that in this kind of situation, principals do not have much autonomy. But again, I would like to say, having been a principal myself, we do have freedom in implementing, in interpreting those policies that is handed down by the government. It all depends on how we think, how we're able to identify the problems of the school. And I guess that is where data comes in.
Our school leaders certainly operate under quite complex and challenging circumstances. But like you said, I think that's where data can come in and help help us draw out plans for school improvement. So, for a school leader who might just be beginning to think about using data, what would be your advice in terms of what they should prioritize or where they can begin?
Right. Having, about 34 years of teaching in schools, under my belt, so to say, I've learned one thing. When I was trained as a teacher, when I was never trained as a principal, because when I was a principal, it was more like being appointed based on seniority. So I learned a lot of my work by learning from the job. But from what I have experienced, I would say that principal leadership development, as well as teacher education program, teacher training program, need to factor in the use of data, because they need to know the skills of using data. Like, for example, what data to collect in the first place, how to collect them, after collecting them, able to interpret what are the stories behind those numbers. See, but having said that, we should not also just restrict to numbers. We can use qualitative data, like, for example, interviews where we talk to people, we gather information, or we can even get data from photographs, from documents. So I think principals as well as teachers need to be trained in that aspect in order to be familiar with using data and use them in their teaching and planning of their lessons and into their policy for the schools. So in the first place, there must be such kind of thing. So actually, you find that some knowledge of statistics is important then, but there is a fear of numbers and data, maybe because we were never taught how to use them. So if we expose these teachers to the use of data, collecting data, not to be afraid of data, you find that a lot can be obtained from there.
So not being afraid and just getting into the numbers. That's helpful. Dr. Ashley, this has been really insightful. I'm so happy that we were able to get you to talk about this today. Thank you again for joining us and making time.
Right, thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my passion for teaching and school improvement. Thank you. Bye.